Hello, my name is Joy Davis, and I am the field organizer here at Peer Justice. Today we have Noelle that's joining us, and she's going to be providing her opinions on police accountability and community safety. How are you doing today, Noelle?
Doing all right. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. All right, let's just hop straight to it. So, in your opinion, do you believe that police keep impoverished communities safe?
No, police don't actually prevent most crime. They tend to come in after the fact. So, I mean, when you're talking about safety, safety involves the bad event not happening in the first place. So, since that's not 97% of their job, there really needs to be other ways of keeping impoverished communities safe. So, no, I don't think the police are keeping them safe.
Thank you. Rather verbal or physical, have you ever been abused by law enforcement?
I have not.
If not, why do you believe you've never had a poor experience with the police? Is it because you've never broken the law? You've never driven too fast? You've never ran a red light? What do you think could be that reason?
Right. Well, I mean, one thing I will say is I tend to be a more cautious driver than most in Houston. So there could be a factor of that. But there's also the fact that where I live, we're not, seeing many police patrols around the streets or that, I just don't interact with them very much. They're not looking for me. They see me as middle-class white woman and they generally let me be. And where I am at, where they are, such as things like festivals and stuff, again, they're not looking for trouble from someone who looks like me.
Right, right. So, do you believe that reporting police abuse to law enforcement is an effective way to seek justice?
I think police abuse does have to be reported. However, reporting it to the person who's doing the abusing is not the correct solution. I mean, there are very, very few situations where in any case, you want to report the wrongdoing to the person doing the wrongdoing, because that just doesn't make sense. Obviously, the person who is doing the wrong thing is very unlikely to change their behavior without some kind of outside mechanism, especially if there's a history of them continuing to do the wrongdoing. And, in the face of reporting, is continuing to do it. I mean, it's one thing if you want to try it one time to see if the person self-corrects. But when you have evidence that that doesn't happen, you need outside organizations or entities to come in and provide the accountability. That's why companies have outside auditing capabilities. It's why the IRS is in charge of, taxes. It's not, a company in charge of paying their taxes and auditing themselves, or a person. There is an outside group to do it, because accountability generally is best when it comes from the outside.
Thank you. And so you mentioned earlier, like the police were not looking for you. Who do you feel like, in your opinion, do you feel like the police target the most?
Black and brown communities, people of a different color than me. There's lots of evidence of that.
Right. Now, did you know every time the budget of law enforcement increases, it can't be rolled back? So whatever we gave them last year, we have to give them again this year. And law enforcement is $4 million away from $1 billion budget. How does it make you feel to know that law enforcement is $4 million away from $1 billion budget when people in the community have been and are still struggling with food and housing insecurities?
So to answer the first question there, I did know that their budget has to stay at its current level or can only be raised. Though I only learned that I think it was last week. So it's a recent discovery for me. I knew that they were roughly half of the Houston city budget, or at least that was my figure. I didn't know precisely where it stood, that it's that close to $1 billion, but I knew it's basically half our tax dollars, if not more at this point. Okay. So I'm not really pleased about that, because again, if you don't have outside accountability and you just keep shoveling money at something, well, how do you know if that's effective? And if you find it's not effective, what's the point of continuing to shovel money at them? And I do know this is a state law that has made it so that you cannot cut the police budgets, and only the police budgets. That's not the case for any other department in a city, which is curious in and of itself. So half my tax dollars are going to this department that doesn't have an outside organization, reviewing it or providing any accountability, and I don't get any say in that. I don't like that at all. Just, kind of independently of what else is going on. And then to know that, okay, so only half of my tax dollars are automatically eaten by that. So the remainder has to be portioned out amongst everything else, means that there's that much less of a pot for the things that, actually will help the city, or, if I may be selfish, personally benefit me. My road might not get fixed because the police have to take that much of my tax dollars away. The drainage around my neighborhood might not get fixed because for some reason the police have to have half of that budget. That's not fair from a purely selfish point of view. And then again, if we broaden it to a wider view, helping people is supposed to be the point of tax dollars. The point is to make a collective society where everybody has the chance to thrive. By automatically taking half of that away, you're leaving the communities out in the cold. And no, I don't like that, because to me, again, I kind of already said that the point of taxes is to help society. It's what collectively needs to be done to make sure everybody has a chance. And that's not happening.
Right. How would you feel if we froze the law enforcement budget in order to fund the needs? And I want to be clear, this is not a defund, it's a freeze. So we would keep the law enforcement budget where it's at, yet before putting another dollar into that budget that can't be shrunk, we could fund community needs like building grocery stores and grocery deserts, properly funding our education system, putting money into housing, transportation, and so on. How would you feel if we froze the budget?
I would be very happy. Again, I will come out and say it. I would prefer their budget did decrease. Again, not necessarily be zeroed out, but as someone who does pay taxes, I want more of that to go to the things that A, I need, and B, what I see my neighbors need to make things better. And right now that's not the police.
Right. So if you could prevent the police from doing one thing like chokeholds or no-knock warrants, making arrests on nonviolent charges, traffic stops, dispatch on civil calls, what would it be?
I only get to pick one. I think, honestly, I'm trying to consider which of those does the most damage. I mean, chokeholds lead to death. We've seen that in several cases. No-knock warrants also lead to deaths, as we've seen in several cases. I honestly don't know which has led to more deaths. Put it this way, I would want to pick the one that reduces the most amount of deaths, because anybody dying at the hands of the police, especially when they have not yet been deemed guilty of a crime or are merely being held on suspicion, that suspicion should not lead to the death penalty for anybody. And so I would want any situation like that to be illegal and eradicated.
All right. So give me a few words of emotion that come to mind when being pulled over by the police, if anything.
I'll be honest, I've never been pulled over by the police at this point. I am super lucky in that. But I actually am afraid of the first time I will be pulled over, because I'll be honest, I won't be sure I'll know how to react, because I'll just be afraid, because all that will be running through my mind is all the times that people have died because of it. And again, I might be in a slightly different situation because of the color of my skin, but that still doesn't mean I'm not afraid of a person who's holding a gun, who is, who has power over me in that situation, where I'm just trying to not be afraid, but I will be afraid.
Okay. So would you feel safe in that situation or not?
No, not at all. I mean, there's a person standing there with power over me with a gun. Why would I? Nobody feels safe in that kind of situation. It's not designed for you to feel safe. It's designed for you to feel intimidated and afraid.
Absolutely. So can you define what police accountability looks like to you? And do you believe that's currently happening in law enforcement departments across the country today?
Okay, so you're asking what the current state of police accountability is, not what I would want.
No, it could be both. Like, okay. What do you think? Like, what does it look like to you? And like, what do you feel like is currently happening in law enforcement today?
Okay. Because to me, what true accountability should be is, again, an outside entity that is responsible for saying, look, there's a problem here. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be addressed. And an organization or authority with the teeth to actually take offenders and give them proper punishment. Like, okay, the first time might be, depending on what it is, a citation or a note in your file. But we've seen that there are police who have done multiple things wrong, the same thing wrong multiple times. And in many cases leading to people dying, people, being held for crimes they didn't commit for extended periods of time. There needs to be teeth in the accountability to say, look, this person needs to be removed from the force. And furthermore, should not be hired as a police person anywhere else. That's a huge problem right now, is even when you do get the super egregious bad apples off the force, they often get hired by a neighboring police force. Why? That's, if for example, if you're a teacher, your teaching license gets revoked and you cannot then be hired as a teacher. Like, there should be some kind of like police license that should be revoked so that you cannot continue to commit your crimes just in a slightly different city. That's not okay. And it's not happening. Right now, police accountability, again, being internal, means that really nothing much happens. It literally has to arise to the point where there is national public outcry for anything to happen. And it has to be caught on video. It has to be caught on video or nothing's going to happen. And again, you're talking about the point where people are dying. And at that point, oh, well, basically it means I just have to effectively be transferred to another police department. Now, wait a minute. No other profession is this acceptable. Why do we accept it from people who literally have the power of life or death? Not okay. Not okay. So I guess I've kind of both answered your question, what I would want and what's not happening.
All right. So in 2023, the Harris County housing budget was $411,000 and $411,604. The police budget is right. The police budget is $4 million away from a $1 billion budget. Could we improve community safety by investing in the needs of the community over investing in more police?
Yes, absolutely. There are always going to be bad apples anywhere, police, and certainly in communities. But a large portion of the reason people commit crime is because they are driven to it by not having what they need. How many people are there are definitely teens who are shoplifting because it's fun, but so much of shoplifting is literally because someone is starving or someone, needs feminine hygiene products and does not have access to them. Literally, you could stop so much shoplifting just by saying, hey, here's some free tampons. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that, you're talking about getting into cycles of criminality and cycling through the system. This could literally be a person who could become a law-abiding citizen if they and productive and tax paying and have a fantastic career that helps people and allows them to pay taxes. If they literally just have access to tampons for a couple months while they're going through a hard spot. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, really. Again, people are charged with things like trespassing, loitering, illegal camping because they're homeless. Like, if you give them a place to go, all of a sudden they're not a criminal. Wait a minute. And they're not in jail. And for, again, I kind of go back to, being a little selfish here. Well, that's my tax dollars paying them for to be in jail. Like, it's cheaper for them to be in a hotel room for a week than for them to be in a jail for a night. I haven't run the numbers. It's probably cheaper for them to be in a motel for like a month than for them to be in a jail for a night. But admittedly, I haven't run the numbers. If we gave them housing, all of a sudden crime immediately drops because you're not getting arrested for illegal camping. You're not getting arrested for loitering. You're not getting arrested for trespassing, which you didn't want to do in the first place. You just literally needed to be somewhere because you are a person in a body that needs to be somewhere. I've already talked about, some of the petty shoplifting, like looking at it from a business perspective. Like, if I came to a business and said, I know of a thing that would prevent people from shoplifting from you, you'd think that business owners would be like all over that, like, hey, that's, inventory we're losing. That's money out of our pockets. And honestly, the answer is to just provide some SNAP funds or, TANF, or better fund things that fall into the gap, like, soap, hygiene products, cleaning products, things that people just basically need to survive that isn't just food, that all of a sudden shops aren't seeing as much shoplifting. Oh wait, what? It's miraculous almost. So really, the crime prevention isn't in the hands of the police. Crime prevention is putting resources in the hands of people who need it, because then they don't want to commit. Many of them don't want to commit the crime in the first place, but it's a question of survival. If we can help people survive, there will be less crime. And then you don't need to worry about the police. And honestly, you don't get to a situation where there's some kind of desperate shootout or police themselves are in danger, because that situation hasn't evolved. You've nipped it in the bud by doing something as simple as, here's a box of tampons and complaining supplies. We'll set you up at a motel for a week, give you a place to have an address so you can apply for jobs, and then we'll get you a job. And all of a sudden, you don't have criminal.
All right. So basically, you're saying we could improve community safety by investing in the needs of the community over investing in more police, correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. What type, excuse me, what type of resources could we use instead of police to address the vulnerabilities of the community in order to create safe communities?
Okay, I think I already kind of answered that, where I said, housing and basic needs. Really, I think those are the big ones. I'm sure there's ones I'm not thinking of, but I think if we start there, we get a lot of it.
So what do you think, like housing, better funded schools, grocery stores?
Oh yeah, schools certainly. Again, with education, you can get the better jobs. You can get, a situation where you're not worrying about piecing together 3 minimum wage jobs. Hey, I'm a nurse now. That's gonna, put me on the career path to a better life. Vocational training. We're gonna need a lot of plumbers, a lot of electricians, and quite frankly, those are jobs that can't be sent overseas. You can computer program from anywhere, but if my toilet breaks, I need someone here, and I need someone here now. I can't I can't ship that job overseas. It's got to be here. So things like really practical vocations, plumbing, electrical, construction is huge. There's going to be huge projects coming through with TxDOT, whether or not we like them. If they're happening, those jobs are going to exist. So getting people into those jobs, again, it sets them up for a stable life in which they're not going to want to commit crime or not have the need to commit crime, because they have what they need.
Right, right. And so another thing that I wanted to ask you is, what do you feel about mental health or transportation being also used to address the vulnerabilities of the community in order to create safe communities?
Absolutely. Mental health is a huge thing. And again, some of the nasty cycles and everything being sort of integrated and intertwined. Mental health issues can be caused by being over policed or being afraid of police or having PTSD from a police encounter. Having someone who can address that as a mental health issue and not as a crime will absolutely help. Again, sending someone with a gun who is meant to intimidate you to a situation where someone is having a mental health crisis will lead to no good situation for anybody. The person who is having the crisis, or even the police officer. I mean, you're basically pouring gasoline on a fire. If you sent someone who is, in the healthcare industry or is a counselor who is trained in mental health, you're not pouring that gasoline on the fire. You're actually sending help. So that's something that can invest in that could really help our communities. And then transportation. Again, to get into the place where you have a stable job, you need a boost sometimes. And one of the ways is, well, if I have a job, I need to get there. Well, if you give someone a way to get there for 6 months, a year, suddenly they have the ability to save some money because they are making money. And then, they can continue to rely on the transport. That would be fantastic. But then they can also invest in, hey, I can buy a house maybe closer to where I work, or, buy a bike or invest in a car. Or again, just keep using the bus and then be able to say, well, I can, afford more things that I can go to a store, buy them. And then the person who owns the store suddenly has more profit, more money to reinvest. It's like by giving people in the lowest income communities money, they don't hoard it, they spend it. So it comes back into the economy and helps everybody. So yes, transport so that people can get to jobs is a critical thing that would help our communities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Noelle. Until next time, let's work together to change some laws. My name is Joy Davis, and I am the field organizer here at Pure Justice. Have a great day.
All right, thank you. You too.